You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
So I've covered a ton of topics in Portland. And why Portland? Because we're the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. You should just stick with Seattle. I'm covering topics basically all over that impact things, that impact society and impact real estate and impact small business, because we got a lot of them going on right now and not necessarily good. Portland, one of the biggest examples of things just going down the wrong path sideways, and we're not really sure how to get them back on the right way. And right way meaning something that's reasonable, a reasonable solution to the homelessness epidemic, a reasonable solution to the nightly protests that have just rocked Portland, boarded up windows, businesses leaving, all that stuff. I talk about that stuff on the regular here in the Seattle Real Estate Podcast because it's ongoing. What are the solutions? So Coin, network from Portland, is doing, I think, a 5 or 6 part series, and I'm going to read this series. So they've got videos. You've got like, yesterday I got like a 12-minute video, 11-minute, 12-minute video, and I'm kind of reading the transcript of that because it brings up a lot of really good points. And that's what we're going to be talking about. Jeff Gianola from Coin 6 News staff is running this, and I'm going to be reading this all week. So this is part 1, and the title is From Wonderful to War Zone. That's a good title, War Zone. And War Zone is a very accurate description. I was down there last summer, did a little video shooting down there, and it was a real eye-opener. And the rest of the title is Portland's Reputation Transformation. Not in a positive way. Before we get into it, if you're new here, my name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies, and I do talk about real estate, but I also talk about other stuff that reasonable people like you and I, hopefully, want to hear. So that's what we're doing. And before we jump in here, I spent a lot of time in Portland as a kid. My grandfather on my dad's side, he was a medical doctor, had a medical practice in Longview, Washington, which is basically just across the Columbia River from Oregon. And so if we did a shopping spree, I'd go down there for a couple of weeks every summer. If we did a shopping spree, like a big back-to-school shopping spree, we'd go to Portland. We'd go to downtown Portland. So I have good memories of Portland, and it was a cool city. I mean, it's got cool rivers, and you got the mountains just to the east. You got the south end of the volcanoes, the Cascade volcanoes. You've got St. Helens. You've got Mount Hood. I mean, it's just a beautiful area, and it's just really turned into just this train wreck of urban blight. If, and you can experience that just going through I-5 through downtown Portland. It's like, oh, geez, where are we? What planet have we hopped onto here? What do we got going on? And it's literally that escape from New York look. It's just rough. I mean, graffiti everywhere, garbage everywhere, crap everywhere, tents everywhere, people milling around. I mean, it's not a good look. Before I go any further, let's read the article. How about that? Everywhere you look, the city of roses has become the city of trash and filth. Strong initial statement. All right. I can't disagree. Portland may be slowly emerging from the pandemic, but the downtown district is fenced off, boarded up, and dying. The city's homeless problem has worsened. Violent protests have damaged the heart of the city and continue to destroy its reputation. And the mayor and other leaders seem overwhelmed, ineffective, and ill-equipped to stop it. I was raised in Portland, Oregon, so to me, I think of the old Portland, said Los Angeles resident Molly. I know now it's changed tremendously, and there's a lot of trouble up there, but I remember it when I was a wonderful place to live. I never lived there, but I did have relatives there. I had an Aunt Grace that lived there. She's long since passed away, but I would go and we would stay for, a long weekend or whatever at Aunt Grace's house in downtown Portland, or just outside of downtown Portland. I don't even really know where it was. You're a kid, you just roll up to a house and you're like, I'm at Aunt Grace's house. You know what I mean? So, but I remember that, but I remember neighborhoods being super nice and you'd go into downtown and it was cool. It was chill, Pacific Northwest. It's always kind of had that undercurrent vibe to it a little bit. But it certainly wasn't tagged up, and it certainly didn't have the windows broken out or boarded up, and it certainly didn't have tents everywhere like it does now. So I can personally attest to a lot of this stuff too. You go back there now and it's like, oh geez, get me out of here. This is not good. This is not a good look for any city, let alone a city as pretty as Portland has been in the past. In the past year, peaceful protests have been hijacked by violence. City landmarks have been defaced and torn down, and uncontrolled vandalism has forced the closure of businesses. So I went down there last summer and shot some of the protests going on right about the time where everybody was complaining that Donald Trump was sending in the feds and they were, just willy-nilly grabbing people off the streets and putting them in unmarked cars. And, it's just an affront to everybody's civil rights. That's just not what was happening, but that's what, the media wanted you to believe. And in reality, what was happening is these big federal buildings had people sitting up in them, and they would watch people committing crimes to the federal buildings. And then they would send a federal officer down to talk with those people. And maybe they got to get them off the street because they don't want to cause a big scene. They've got the right to do that. That's what they were doing. So I was down there covering that, and they had just put up a big metal fence around one of the federal buildings. And it was that night that they tore it down for the first time. It was a glorious victory for them. And they also just rocked public restrooms. There's video that goes, basically the video is what this news story is. At the 8-minute and 40-second mark of this video, they show the restroom that I filmed. That is the most rocked public restroom that I have ever seen in my entire life. If there wasn't still what was left of a toilet in the corner, you probably wouldn't know it was a restroom. It was just absolutely demolished. This is in a park in the middle of a downtown area, and it's a very pretty, like, brick exterior public restroom. It should be cool. It was just like literally probably a bomb went off in there. And I've been to some rough music concerts where people do just crazy stuff and they vandalize things. And this was elevated to such an extent that it was like, oh my gosh, this used to be a restroom. This is nuts. Violence for the sake of violence. That's how I would describe it. So it was just a little disappointing to see how unkept the city was. And the homelessness was in a bad way, said Eileen, who was visiting from Florida. It was worse than I thought it was going to be. That's interesting. It's worse. It's just not a place that I would feel comfortable putting my family on a plane and flying into Portland, Oregon now, said Kevin from Nashville. We would choose other cities. And I've spent a lot of time talking with folks, people that run the travel industry, the tourism industry, and they've long since said, yeah, Portland and Seattle, no go. Can't have clients going there. Can't recommend having big events there. And this is the stuff that I kind of talk about from the pro-business standpoint. So when you are allowing this stuff to go on from a business standpoint, it's a no-go. Any of that tourism, setting up a business, bringing in new business, it's a no-go. So you've got these influences happening, and a lot of people are like, oh, well, we want to be compassionate to our fellow human being. All right, we don't really want to lock them up. And, First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, we got to let them do their thing. Well, here's where you end up with that. You end up with a city that is ripped apart. That's kind of where you're at. How about the shootings in Portland? Let's not even, you can go there. That is just, they are literally target practicing on each other down in Portland. The gun violence is just crazy. It's pretty sad what's become of downtown, the filth. There's no reason to go down there anymore, said April. We used to go spend a day and shop and eat. It's just that I wouldn't feel safe down there anymore. So I took my 25-year-old kid to the protests. And I know quality father-son time comes in different shapes and forms. My kids, are kind of used to rolling around with a dad who does some pretty unconventional things. But I took Brennan with me to that. And yeah, we did we got tear gassed, and I've got a full video. You can see that if you want. But it was one of those things where when we got out of there, it's like, good Lord, let's get out of here. Let's go back to Seattle. When you're saying, and and he lives in Seattle, and he didn't at the time, and I live in Bellevue, which is, different. But when you're like, let's go back, let's get out of this city, because this is not where I want to hang out. But I did. I mean, I didn't feel safe in a lot of those streets. And you've got a justice system, you got a justice building right where I was, recording a lot of this. So there's cops, there's feds, there's, Portland Police Bureau. You've got cops everywhere. And I didn't feel safe. I mean, this is sketchy. This is literally sketchy. I started a live stream down there, and I turned it off. I'm like, I am scared. And you can see that in the video. It was like, all right, I should not be doing this. I should not be doing a live stream here. So I turned it off, and I got out my GoPro because you can run a GoPro and people don't really know what you're doing. Whereas with your live streaming with the phone, you might as well announce to everybody, hey, I'm live streaming. Hey, come ask me a question. What are you doing? So what has happened to Portland? Can we reclaim the city and not only restore its reputation, but improve it? Sure, you can. You can. It's just going to take some pretty major change that we don't have the infrastructure. It's not available to Portland yet. It's not there. It's not there. The political structure, it has done nothing but let the city unravel. And so you're going to have to make some pretty major changes. And I think articles and stories like this are kind of that first major step of maybe recognizing that there is a problem. Here's the problem. What are you going to do to fix it? One thing is certain, wounds this deep will take a long time to heal. Yeah, this isn't going away overnight, is it? No. Same thing in Seattle. Some of the stuff going on in Seattle, that's not going away overnight. We have got sweeps going on in Seattle. We've got the Broadway Hill Park. I know you probably don't care about this, but here's the deal. When the CDC said, maybe you do. I don't know. If somebody said, hey, if it was exciting, I'd watch a sweep of the homeless encampments. I feel kind of bad doing that because you are displacing people. You're displacing them out of their homes. And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. So it's like, I don't want to sweep people out, but they also can't be living in the park. Where do they go? Okay, they're going into temporary housing. Does that make sense? Do you want to just kind of keep moving these people around? We need a more permanent solution. And I don't know what that is. Other people are working on that. I just kind of identify the problems and go, okay, so from a pro-business standpoint, from a real estate standpoint, here's my angle. Here's what I think. And just as a human being, just trying to relate to, okay, that dude chooses to live on the streets. That's not everybody's story, but that dude chooses to live on the streets. Should he be able to live there? And my answer is no, he shouldn't. And yet in a progressive city like Portland or Seattle, that is not the answer that we give out. Alex Hoffberg had spent 30 years building his business, Watchworks, in downtown Portland. He invested and believed in the city, but his business was recently robbed and the looters got away with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of merchandise. I believe it was like $400,000. I remember reading that story. Horrible. Imagine making that insurance claim. That's a one and done insurance claim. Excuse me, you're in Portland and the rioters got your stuff. Okay, we are not renewing your policy. Not until you move and you become, put your business in a safer place. This is a guy who's been there 30 years. He's got his entire career wrapped up in that location, right? And now he's got to move because we're allowing a bunch of protesters to run around willy-nilly and loot stuff. Hoffberg and his wife rushed to the store. Police officers were nearby, dealing with what Alex said appeared to be intruders at a Target. I believe it was a Target and a Starbucks. Hoffberg's wife decided to ask the officers for help. As I'm puzzling whether to go in, she gets out of the car and tries to persuade some police officers to assist and check the premises for us, which they politely declined to do. So I went in alone, he said. Man, I don't know. Would I have the guts to go in there? I don't know. It's your livelihood. And yet you only got one life. You can't replace that. You get killed, you're done. The business truly done, unless you're working with a partner or something. And then it just gets wildly rocked. So I went in alone, he said. After wading through broken glass and smashed jewelry cases, Hofberg learned that at least $400,000 in watches and other items were gone, along with his faith in Portland and what it stands for. How many of these stories do we need to have? How many established businesses that are the backbone of Portland's economics? How many of them need to leave and until we're like, oh, hey, maybe we should do something here. Instead of continually reimagining and rethinking, actually do something. What about that? What's it going to take? I don't know. You're going to have to drop the hammer. You're going to have to drop the hammer on something somewhere and take a very unpopular opinion to get some forward motion going in the right direction here. And that's going to, leadership in Portland right now, the way it is, that's not going to happen. This will take a long time to heal, said Hofberg. It's not going to come back very quickly. The couple boarded up the shop and left downtown along with many other businesses. That is heartbreaking. You know why? Because that could have been avoided. But Portland, it's what we're doing. Cameron's Books and Magazines has survived 80 years in downtown Portland. Despite financial struggles, then the pandemic. A bookstore. Those are not going gangbusters right now if you didn't know. You know what I mean? The economics of a bookstore, very difficult. But it was the nightly violent protests that pushed things over the edge. Much of the civil unrest starts and ends here, said owner Crystal Zingsheim. Everyone sees the bookstore as the backdrop of Murderville, USA. I watched the video and I watched her say that. And I was like, she's thought about that a while. Murderville, USA. It's just rough. And pretty much we're just left to keep peace on our own. Like the cops don't even want to go into a store. They deal with so much of this. They've got their protocol and they're like, yep, nope, we didn't get called on that store. So they're just not even going in. There's so much of this going on a regular basis. It's like, another business just got hit. Small businesses and shops aren't the only places hit hard by the nocturnal vandals. They only come out at night. They're dressed in all black and they only come out at night. Kind of tells you something, doesn't it? And they don't want streamers. They don't want live streamers. They don't want a record of what's going on. I'm recording this on May the 11th. We have a protest in Bellevue tonight. The Billy Graham Association or whatever that is. My mom used to be a big fan, or maybe still is. I'm not sure, Mom. Sorry. Billy Graham is hosting a We Support the Police event in Bellevue. And so we've got protesters coming, as you would expect, because we can't support the police. No, we don't want to support law and order. We want to support chaos and anarchy like Portland's got going on. Last month, a group of people smashed windows at 2 downtown churches and vandalized the Oregon Historical Society for a second time. One of the pieces of graffiti that came out of smashing, I think the second time, the Oregon Historical Society, was "No More History." That's what was written in graffiti on the building or on the windows. Was it on a window, mashed out window? No more history. That kind of tells you something, doesn't it? No more history. What does that mean? We're always going to have history. We don't want to recognize it. We don't want any. We just forget about history. Crazy stuff. I mean, you know what it means. It just means, we're not recognizing anything anymore. Not only were we vandalized in this incident, but so was a nearby church, which is very active in helping the homeless. And the fact that they would break windows there and break our windows leaves you questioning what the message is. If there is a message, said Carrie Timchuk, the executive director of the Oregon Historical Society. How about rocking the Blazers Boys and Girls Club? How about bashing the windows there? So you got churches having their windows bashed out, small businesses. You've got the Oregon Historical Society. You've got the Boys and Girls Club. What is this message? What message is being created by bashing out windows and looting? It's not really a message that I'm familiar with that I would probably be down with. I don't know what message this is other than just sheer chaos. That's what it seems like to me. Signs advertising buildings for lease can be found all over the downtown district. Many buildings are covered in plywood. I mean, they're coming up on a 20% vacancy in downtown Portland. 20%, 1 out of 5 spaces, empty. Not a good look. People don't want to come downtown. They don't feel safe. And even moreover, the small shops and the little guys, the local folks, they are really getting hurt by this and the protests and the damage there. It's just killing downtown Portland, said commercial real estate broker Doug Bean. Bean has been managing and leasing commercial office space for more than 40 years in Portland. And I looked at all these people in this video and I'm like, these are just regular people. These are not Trump supporters. These are not right-wing fanatics. These are not QAnon, all this stuff. These are just normal people trying to do normal everyday life things and running businesses. This guy's trying to lease real estate. He's been leasing real estate for more than 40 years. So he's probably in his mid to late 60s, I would guess. And he's like, whoa. And here's what he says. I'm not optimistic about the future of the downtown core without a change of how we handle the protests and how we handle the filth and the graffiti. Protests, filth, graffiti, homelessness. You got to deal with those. Otherwise, it's a no-go. We need to make people feel safe to want to come to the Central Business District. The Central Business District, the heart of the city, is empty. Portland's downtown commercial vacancy rate has reached a staggering 17.5% and is projected to keep climbing. There you go. Coming up on 20%. Not a good look. This is as vacant as downtown Portland has been, said Bean. He's been there 40 years, remember? 40 years. And he's looking around going, oh. And when I was down there and I was, right in downtown, and this was during the heat of the protests. And the nation was kind of looking at Portland because we had, this whole thing about the feds. The feds are just scooping up people left and right. Just the drama was immense. And that's why I went down there. I'm like, this sounds like some BS. I'm going to go down there and see what's really going on. And I did. And it was a bunch of whiny, protesters beating on federal buildings, tearing apart parks, just, doing this stuff that I don't agree with. Because the message, it's not really, there really isn't a message that's, being consistently given out. It's nothing that I can really identify with. And I've told you the story about me, standing there and it's getting 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, something kind of late. I can't remember, 9, maybe my son Brennan remembers, but we're standing there kind of waiting for something to happen. I think I'd already been tear gassed at that point. And a dude just walks up in the middle of the street. This is a major street that's been blocked off, and starts shooting a paint gun at a security camera. And just everybody's like, oh yeah, just what we're doing in Portland. He's just taking a air rifle and paint gun rifle and just plink, plink, plink. So there's no, video footage of them bashing on a federal building. That's pretty normal. Hey, this is just normal. We just, bring out a paint gun and, that security camera up there. We just fill it with some paint. Nobody said a word. I'm looking around going, what are we doing? How does this work? That's just, paint gun, security camera. It's kind of low on the totem pole of priority when you're doing all kinds of other craziness, right? The media coverage of Portland with civil unrest and the pandemic unfortunately scared a lot of these folks away. And that means less money getting brought into the city. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Oh, no kidding. Portland's reputation has fallen dramatically among investors, lenders, and developers. The 2021 Urban Land Institute's reports on trends in real estate shows Portland was the 3rd most desirable real estate market in U.S. in 2017. This year, it dropped to 66th out of 80 cities surveyed. Oregon economist Tom Potiowski said he could not think of another example of an area that has so quickly fallen into disfavor. I think I dedicated an entire podcast to that because you go from 3rd, you're right up there, to 66th in desirability to invest in a city. That is a rapid drop. I mean, that's a turbocharged drop right to the bottom, right? That is throttle wide open. Here we go. We're going down. All right, get out of our way. And you just clear out. 63 other cities in your way to the bottom. It's just crazy. During the pandemic, Portland's homeless population has exploded onto city streets and into neighborhoods. The scale of the issue continues to grow, along with piles of garbage and graffiti reaching epidemic proportions. I was reading about the clear out of Echo Park. I think they took out 66 tons or something like that. It's just an epic number of tons of just garbage, literally garbage from a city park. Imagine you've picked up visitors at Portland International Airport. You get in the car to take a ride downtown, and you drive west down I-84. You see dozens of tents line both sides of the freeway. It only gets worse after you cross the Morrison Bridge into downtown. Can't you just hear that dramatic music? Just yeah, because it's not a good look, and it's kind of drama filled, and you're like, oh, geez, I feel like something bad's going to happen, like a horror film. Because that's kind of how I feel when I'm like, somebody's doing a video of all these tents. You're like, who's going to hop out of that tent? When's that tent going to catch on fire? When's that propane tank inside going to blow up? But perhaps the most shocking scenes are found along I-5, just north of Portland. What is visible from the freeway reveals just a glimpse of the human tragedy and the debris littering the landscape. The full extent of the problem can be seen from above. They had some good video in this. They had some good aerial drone. Garbage litters the ground as far as the eye can see in places where most people live among trash. It's the result of a homeless crisis that has spiraled out of control. Jim Etzel, the CEO of Sports Oregon, helps bring major sporting events and games to Portland. What those decision makers see when they visit Portland matters. You can't hide it at all. And let's face it, it's a humanitarian problem, Etzel said, but it's real and it affects people's decisions on placing events here. That is what I have been told, and that's what I've been hammering home, is that some of the major impact is impact that we will feel in the future because of Portland's the damage to its reputation, right? It's taken a massive hit. Portland was in the running for the NC2A Women's Final Four, which would have brought in millions of dollars for the local economy. Etzel's pitch for Portland's bid couldn't ignore the city's reputation. We punched it in the face in our presentation and just addressed it head on, Etzel said. They claim it wasn't a big topic in the decision factor, but it had to be weighing there. It didn't help us. Whether it hurts them is open to interpretation. I think it absolutely does. Oh, Portland? Yeah. No. You want to go play dodge the human fecal matter on the sidewalk? Not really. I mean, that's kind of what's going through people's head, right? The bottom line, whether it hurts them, it doesn't help them. And this, sentence ended with, it didn't help us. So whether it hurts them, open to interpretation, there's no way to me. I mean, it hurts them. And it certainly doesn't help them. In the end, Tampa was awarded the 2025 game, and Phoenix won the big for the 2026. It's the last thing you want to open your presentation with, and you don't want to bury it in the back, but it shouldn't even be on the tape. But it was, Etzel said. Mike Daly, the area manager of Pollen Hotels and board chair of Travel Portland, said the coronavirus and the protests are to be blamed for turning Portland into one of the 2 worst hotel markets in the country. Not on the West Coast, the country. Certainly the pandemic was the overriding issue, he said. Then the civil unrest that went on for over 100 days gave us a bit of a black eye across the country. A black eye? Okay, we'll go with that. I like Portland. I'm going to give it just a black eye. I would have said probably, both legs amputated-ish, but that's just me. Downtown Portland needs life support. Residents don't feel safe. Yeah, you don't need life support after a black eye. Major limbs have been lost here. Residents don't feel safe. A humanitarian crisis is playing out on the streets, and trash is literally piling up. It's worth asking, is Portland over? I don't think Portland is over, but I think it is bottomed out. Let's go there. It is bottoming out, and it's going to take some real overhaul to get that motion going in the right direction. Economist Bill Connerly ignited a firestorm last January when his article, Death of a City, appeared in Forbes magazine. Connerly's pointed words about what has happened to Portland struck a nerve. They said, yes, somebody is now saying what we've been thinking, but there was also a layer of people who were very angry that I criticized the city. I get that. I get those same jokers too. You just don't understand, man. You don't understand Seattle. We live in Seattle. We like it here. We're okay with how things are going. You can take your rich snob attitudes and just get out of here, man. I'm like, okay, all right, whatever. It's not reasonable. This stuff isn't reasonable. You're just letting people kill themselves on the sidewalk, literally. That's literally what you're doing. There were hostile, profane, almost threatening voicemails and emails, so it riled up a lot of people. I've had my fair share of those. People just want to call and scream and report me to, let's go with the FBI, Homeland Security, CIA, local law enforcement. They want to report me to all those people because I'm saying things that they don't agree with. Right. Okay. So far, the FBI hasn't come knocking on my door, and I don't think they will. Because they're probably like, we probably agree with this guy more so than not. I don't know. Connerly believes the city needs an attitude adjustment. I think that for Portland not to be over there needs to be a change in the attitudes among the broad communities of leaders, he said. The city's mayor hasn't given up hope. No, I don't believe Portland is dying. Well, he's the mayor. This is on him, right? And it didn't start with him, but it's on him, right? So he's got to go with the political doublespeak. Let's see what that looks like. No, I don't believe Portland is dying. I think we've gone through a very, very difficult period. I agree. I'm going to go with you, Ted. I'm going to give you that one. We still have a lot of challenges ahead of us, but this isn't the time to fold up the tent and walk away, said Mayor Ted Wheeler. I do appreciate his not letting up and kind of just got to keep going. I think at this point in time, he doesn't really know what to do. Like, what do you do? I think, you're going to have, like I keep saying, you're going to have to drop some hammer. You're going to have to drop the hammer on some pretty unpopular decisions. You're going to have to start doing some sweeps, and you're going to have to take some real drastic action against these chuckleheads that are nightly, rioting and causing this damage. You're going to have to throw some of those guys in jail for a while. That's what you're going to have to do. As for the roadways lined by homeless camps, Wheeler said the situation is heartbreaking. Okay, do something about it then. Do something about it. It breaks my heart, not as the mayor, but as somebody who was born and raised here, who has lived my whole life here. Those right-of-ways are an embarrassment to all of us. It's an affront to our sensibilities as Oregonians. But you notice there isn't so here's what we're going to do. You never have that. That's one of the things I get accused of is, hey, Sean, you don't have to problem solve all the time. That's one of the greatest complaints I have of people in my life is, hey, you don't have to come up with a solution, because that's, as a business owner of two businesses, that's a lot of what I do is troubleshoot. Okay, you got a problem? People are continuously bringing me problems. Hey, we can't do that. All right, let's try this, and this. Hey, that's not working. All right, well, let's go do this. And so when people are like, yeah, there's some stuff in Portland. Okay, well, we're going to do this, and this. Hey, Sean, it's not up to you. Oh, all right. Well, I'm still going to give my opinion. Bob McElroy, the director of a successful homeless program in San Diego called Alpha Project, believes Portland's failed efforts to solve the homelessness situation came down to ethics. In Portland, you have confused compassion with tolerance. Let's take a look at that for a second. You have confused compassion with tolerance. I agree. I think there is very much something there. It's not compassionate to allow people to shoot up drugs or live in filth on a sidewalk because you want to be tolerant. That's what I've been saying kind of all along. It's not compassionate to allow people to shoot up drugs, kill themselves eventually, and live in filth on a sidewalk because you want to be tolerant. That's not compassion. That's where hard love comes in, right? Tough love. Gonna have to drop the hammer. That's what we're talking about. What does that look like? I don't really know, but it's not going to be pretty. You're going to have some pretty major conflict going on before things get really cleaned up. There's a very fine line between compassion and enabling, Mayor Ted Wheeler responds with. It's really hard for well-meaning, moral people in the city of Portland and progressives to come to the conclusion that sometimes the best love that you can give someone is tough love. Uh-oh. Are we getting tough? Are we going to get tough? This is going to hurt you more than it's going to hurt me. It's the old famous parental thing. That's back when parents could actually swat their kids in the rear. Ooh, now that's a no-go, right? Yeah, that whole thing. So is Portland over? It's only over if we let it be over and do nothing. Well said. Totally agreed. If you don't do anything, it's going to keep being this train wreck that we're going to keep watching till it eventually just burns out and explodes and there's just nothing left. Do I want to see that happen to Portland? Hell no. No, I want to see it get cleaned up. I want to see it going back, because in doing so, I think you're actually helping a lot of those people that are being hurt right now. Just, all right, yeah, you go do your thing. We love you. Go shoot up, kill yourself. We're okay with that. You know, we'll give you some services, whatever you need to continue that lifestyle. We'll help you out. But as far as a long-term solution for your opioid addiction or your psychiatric needs that are clear, you got some mental problems there. You know, we want to help these people, but we're not doing it. And that's what's going on. And then the whole, nightly protests for weeks and months on end, that can be solved pretty quickly, but it's not going to be pretty. We're going to have some conflict. I think that's where we're headed. All right, so I'm going to cover this story every day for the next, 5 more days, I think it is? 4 more days? I don't know. I'll tell you when it's over. You guys can follow along on Coin out of Portland. It's a good story. This is another story, kind of like the Seattle is dying type story from Como. So check it out. I'm going to cover it because I think it's relevant. You're basically capsulating and winding in some stories of a lot of stuff that I've been reading and that we all know about that's out there. But a lot of people, I think it's just coming to the forefront for them. They're like, what? Portland's bad? It doesn't look, oh, geez. Oh, I'm not going there. And now you're starting to hear about it. Now we've had this going on for long enough where you're starting to see the stats. You've got that vacancy rate going. You got businesses leaving. You don't have new businesses coming in. The people who are responsible for bringing in new business are like, yeah, it's kind of a no-go in Portland. It's the second worst market for hotels. Yeah, not a good look. Not a good look for Portland. You know what? I still believe in Portland. I still believe in Seattle. They can make a comeback, but it's going to be some tough work. I think Seattle's working on it right now. I really do. Some of the stuff I see there. But Portland, it's got a ways to go. Any which way, I will cover these stories for you right here in the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Thanks for being here. Love to have you subscribe. Hit that notification bell. Again, thanks for being here. I'm going to go record another one on something like this. Can't remember what it is. I know it's important. It's important. I'll see you there. Until then, stay safe. And again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you soon. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.